All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, talking Ohio State Buckeyes with Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts, 247's platform for Ohio State football and basketball. Steve, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great.
Want to remind everyone that we need you to help build the channel by liking the videos, commenting on the Buckeyes, college football, the Big Ten, whatever your topic, and of course, share the videos and subscribe right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. The Buckeyes coming off, of course, 13-1 with Urban Meyer on the sideline, now with Ryan Day, the new head man, hit the practice field for spring practice on March 6th. Spring game is on April 13th. So, Steve, this is always the question for any school, regardless of the personnel changes. Guys need to step up. Departures are aplenty at Ohio State in particular when we talk about first-rate talent. Some of the guys that you're looking at as we prepare for spring in regards to guys that are going to need to fill the gap and show their worth.
Yeah, you look at it, Ohio State had 6 guys leave early for the NFL. They've got 4 guys back starting on offense, 9 guys starting on defense. So there are some jobs that'll be open this spring, and I think you look at it maybe on the offensive side of the ball, 2 or 3 guys. I call it guys on the spot. I'm working on a series right now for Bucknuts.com, and we released the offensive list today. And number 1 on my list was Justin Fields. And again, this list is guys who need to work on development. Learning the game plan and the scheme, also playing at a high level to earn a job. And I think the sense of urgency is probably the last thing that I'm looking for when I make this list up, is that these are guys in some cases, and not necessarily in Fields' case, but in some of these guys' cases, they got to deliver the goods now, because if they don't win a job this spring and this summer going into the fall, they're going to get passed over by guys who are younger than them and may never have that opportunity to be a starter at Ohio State. So for some of these guys we'll talk about, it's kind of like do or die, now or never type situation for some fourth-year juniors and different guys like that who've been waiting their turn. But I put Fields on the list mostly because he's the guy everyone's pinning the hopes for the national championship, the Big Ten championship, on how good he is. And I think this spring is important for him to grasp the offense, show a mastery of the offense. It's a new offense, obviously, that Mike Yurcich is bringing from Oklahoma State to kind of meld with what Ryan Day and Urban Meyer have done at Ohio State here the last couple of years. You may not see as many elements of what Meyer liked going forward, because Ryan Day's the head coach now, and he can call the shots and go in his own direction. So I think Fields will be an effective quarterback in the zone read offense, but again, we don't know to what degree we're going to see those type of wrinkles and those kind of things. So I have Fields probably at the top of my list on offense. A couple other guys who really need to have a great spring to lock in some work for the fall. They've got a 4th-year junior. His name is Mario Mccall. He is one of the fastest players on the team. When he was a freshman a couple of years ago, he made a couple plays where he just darted away from everybody, and you thought, man, if they could just get this guy in the open field. Well, this past year, in 14 games, he had 30 touches, and most of those were on kick returns and punt returns, so they still haven't figured out how to get him the ball, running the ball, or throwing the ball to him on a consistent basis. He's a former Mr. Football Award winner, I believe, in the state of Ohio. So he is a guy that could be electric, playing that Percy Harvin, Curtis Samuel type role in what we say was the Urban Meyer offense, if Day retains that H receiver position in his offense. And no reason to think that there'll be a drastic switch in year one. But McCall is another guy. And then as far as otherwise on offense, I look at Josh Meyers. He'll be a 3rd-year sophomore at center. They've had some great centers, Jacoby Boren, Pat Elflein, Billy Price, Michael Jordan. The last 3 of those guys all in the NFL. Jordan will be after he gets drafted. And now they're looking to the next guy. And here's Josh Meyers. 2 years ago, he was one of the top recruits in the class. And he's basically sat on the bench for 2 years. He was redshirted and didn't play a whole lot last year as a redshirt freshman. So now he's being called upon to win that center position. Matthew Jones, a redshirt freshman, will probably compete with him for that. And Harry Miller, a true freshman out of Georgia, one of the top prospects in the 2019 class, when he gets to campus in the fall, he'll probably fall in line with those centers as well to learn that position. So there's 3 names right there. Another one that only Ohio State fans would probably know is Jaylen Harris, a wide receiver. He's now a junior. He was a top recruit out of the Cleveland area a couple years ago, and he's just, played behind McLaurin and Dixon and Campbell and and KJ Hill and Austin Mack and Benjamin Victor have been the top 6 for the last couple of years. Now Jaylen Harris in his 3rd year, and he's only played sparingly for 2 years, but he has played, not redshirted. The moving sidewalk is ending. You need to look down, because before you know it, you'll be a senior, and maybe Chris Olave, a younger guy, will have passed you by, as an example. So Jaylen Harris is a guy I kind of say is on the spot offensively for the Buckeyes. I can run some defensive ones as well if you like.
Absolutely. Well, Chris Olave, of course, coming into his own down the stretch with a huge game against Michigan in particular. Looking at Mario Mccall's production at Ohio State, where he burst onto the scene as a freshman with 49 carries, 5.5 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. And as you mentioned, aside from the kick game from scrimmage, he's been used less his last 2 years in 2017 and 2018, with only 8 carries last year and 9 pass receptions out of the backfield, 6 career touchdowns for Mario Mccall, who has been one of those guys that Buckeye fans have been waiting on becoming a major contributor in the offense. Yeah, let's look at the defense. Obviously, underperforming last year, supposed to be one of the best defensive lines in the country, missing its best player for most of the season after the TCU game, but still coming up with some monumental efforts late in the season, finally getting productivity as some of the guys stepped up and played much better and developed after early season poor performances. So what do we have for 2019 in your eyes?
I don't know. I think anybody who saw the Week 11 game against Maryland would say, when they gave up 51 points but still won the game, that the poor performances lasted all season long for the defense. They set a new record in the entire history of Ohio State football for points allowed per game and yards allowed per game. And those broke records set in 1988 and 1989 separately. One was yards, one was points. Those were the first 2 years of the John Cooper era. They were 4-6-1 in Cooper's first year in 1988. So that'll give you the depth of how bad things were, that they broke records that a 4-6-1 team set back in 1988 in terms of yards and points allowed. Ryan Day gutted the defensive staff after the way that the defense played last year. Greg Schiano not retained, Bill Davis gone. It was Grinch leaving to go to Oklahoma, and Taver Johnson not back as the cornerbacks coach. The only guy who survived the purge was Larry Johnson, the world-renowned defensive line coach. I always put a plug in for Larry Johnson every time, because he is he deserves the Broyles Award, I think, one of these years, but you may or may not get it, because it always goes to a Venables or a, de jure, the hot coordinator of the year. But at any rate, what's going to happen this spring is they're going to go in a completely new direction on defense with Jeff Hafley coming over from the 49ers, Al Washington, Greg Madison coming from Michigan, Matt Barnes coming from Maryland. They're going to put their stamp on the defense, probably make some changes to the scheme. And when you think about it, basically it gives anybody who's on the defensive side of the ball, whether they were a starter in 2018 or not, some hope that if they come in with these fresh coaches coaching that unit, and if they perform at a high level this spring, they will have a chance to get on the field, whether they've ever played in 2017 or 2018 previously. So to me, I think for those kids, it's got to be kind of a refreshing thing that they have a chance. I think the number one guy, when my defensive I'm going to tip my hand, but one of my top guys on my defensive list is going to be Baron Browning. And he was a national top 15 recruit 2 years ago. And boy, time flies when you're having fun. He's been on scholarship there 2 years, been injured. He missed spring last year with a shoulder injury, missed some time late last season with an undisclosed injury that no one ever really unearthed what the issue was with that, missed a couple games. And he's kind of been sitting behind Tough Borland at middle linebacker. Perhaps he could play outside linebacker. We don't know. But if Tough Borland wins the middle linebacker job, Baron Browning's going to have to look outside to find some work because, he's moving into his junior year, a national top 15 recruit. And, if he wants to be in the NFL, as most top 15 recruits probably do, he's going to need to get on the field at Ohio State. So this spring is critical in his development. They had a couple guys. Pete Werner played one of the outside spots. Maybe he can threaten him for that job. I think Malik Harrison, if anybody on the defense is set, Malik Harrison is probably set. I would say Chase Young is set at defensive end. I would say Robert Landers is set at defensive tackle. Jordan Fuller is set at safety. And Damon Arnett, I'd put him kind of on the spot as well because he passed up a chance to go to the NFL and come back. And yet he had major issues last year in terms of giving up big plays, getting flagged for penalties. He needs to go back to the drawing board this spring and figure out how to play clean press coverage because if he goes through those same issues this fall, they're going to pull him out of there and put a Sean Wade or Jeffrey Okudah, one of those other guys in there. They're not going to hesitate. These are new coaches. I mean, Hafley and Barnes are going to coach the secondary, and they're not beholden to anybody, particularly a senior they didn't recruit in Arnett. So he's going to have to go back and tighten up his game. So I put him on the spot this spring as well. A couple other ones I think about. Haskell Garrett played at Bishop Gorman High School in Nevada with Tate Martell, came in with him 2 years ago, has played sparingly the last couple of years as a backup on the defensive tackle for Ohio State. And again, I use the saying, time flies when we're having fun. He and Baron Browning are now in their third year of eligibility. These are the money years. This is when, if you ever pop off a great junior year, you could leave to go to the NFL after this season. I think it's unlikely for either one of those guys at this point. But they were both considered top 50 recruits coming out of high school. So maybe a little bit of a disappointing start to their career, but I think those two guys in particular are guys I would put on the spot. Pete Werner, the guy I mentioned a moment ago. Al Washington is coming in to take over the linebackers from Bill Davis, and he's going to pop in, I would think, a few of the tapes from how the team played in 2018 and also be watching how they practice here this spring. And if you're not making plays and you're not getting off blocks and stopping the run and these kind of things and being a rugged linebacker, you're probably not going to play. So I think in Pete Werner's case, I would say that Bill Davis and Greg Schiano and the coaching staff, they were at practice every day. They played the guys who were the most consistent every day in and day out. And yet when you get onto the field, Ohio State struggled mightily at times, stopping the run, gave up long running plays, two of them to Maryland, I think another one early in the season to TCU, I believe. So they had issues, throughout the season in terms of the running game and supporting in the pass. I don't want to lay all of that on Pete Werner. It was a system-wide, defense-wide issue. But he's got to go back and re-earn that job, I think, this spring. And I would put him in that group. I think Jonathan Cooper at defensive end, I would say, he's got to go out and earn that job. He's a senior and a leader. But, is he going to play half the plays this coming year if there are some young and hungry pass rushers coming up behind him? Last guy I'll mention is Zach Harrison, the early enrolling freshman, the top recruit that Ohio State got, national top 15 player from Orange High School, about a half hour north of Ohio State in Delaware County. And he signed with Ohio State over Michigan and Penn State. A lot of excitement to get him on campus. I think with the depth that they have at defensive end with a Chase Young and a Cooper and a Jayshon Cornell and Tyreek Smith and Tyler Friday, there may or may not be an opportunity for him right away. But if he comes in this spring and shows Larry Johnson that he can get to the quarterback, they won't hesitate to play him. So I think that is something that we're all going to enjoy watching this spring, is watching him kind of cut his teeth going against the varsity offensive linemen every day in spring football, and let the chips fall where they may. But there's probably 4 or 5 guys on both sides of the ball who it would behoove them to have a great spring. Some of them because it's either now or never, or because a job is open. It's there for the taking. It's theirs for the taking with a great spring. And again, some of these guys, the time is ticking into the future, and you don't want to let your entire college career go by without winning a job.
Baron Browning made his way into 9 games last season, had 3.5 tackles for loss and 1 sack. You mentioned, Steve, that it's a very, very unlikely, even with a very productive season for Browning in particular. You mentioned a few other guys, for them to jump completely from being fairly non-existent to having such a productive season that they leave after their junior season to go to the NFL draft. Would, for you, Malik Hooker, he's the first name that comes to mind when you talk about somebody that was not seeing the field, was not considered an early entry NFL type of guy, and then all of a sudden burst onto the scene, had a great season, and he's gone.
Excuse me. Yes. If I can talk, I will talk. Hooker was a guy who came into the situation, I want to say in 2016, I believe was his year. And maybe after Von Bell left, after 2015, perhaps. Maybe I've got my years.
Yeah, because he had the big interception. Well, it looked like a big interception at the time, where he ran all the way across the field against Clemson in the playoffs and intercepted that ball in the corner of the end zone.
Yes, definitely. Where we first, and this is why this time of year is so important. In that spring of 2016, Hooker had not played much in 2015 on the team. That they had a great team, obviously, and a lot of guys back. Powell and Bell, I think, were both the safeties on the 2015 team. 2016, in the spring game, Hooker intercepted not 1 but 2 passes. I think at least one of them off J.T. Barrett. And I've got a photo somewhere of Barrett kind of half-heartedly chasing him down as he returned it for a touchdown in the spring game. So coming out of the spring game, there was already some buzz about Marcus Hooker coming out of that game. And then he went into the season and had just one of the best single seasons for a safety in Ohio State memory. I'd put him up there, with so many of the guys that they have had over the years, like a Mike Doss, Kurt Coleman, Von Bell, and I'm sure I'm leaving, any number of guys out that have been, maybe all Big Ten, All-American caliber guys. I think Hooker was an All-American that year at safety, at least by some of the selectors. So, and certainly went off to the NFL after that one great year. So, I think about it that he is a perfect example that you can hold up and say that, yeah, it's February, it's March, but things are determined now that will shape and change your football career by how you practice this spring. Decisions will be made. There'll be a pecking order coming out of the spring, a depth chart, so to speak, going into the start of preseason camp on August the 1st or whatever day it is, and probably late July, but whatever it may be. This time is critical for development and for guys to leap out of the pack. If everything's equal, you put the decision in the hands of the coaches. If you blow everybody away on the practice field this month that's upcoming, you've basically taken the decision out of the coaches' hands. You've made it for them that you're going to be their guy. So they're looking for people that they can trust, and I think that was a tremendous example of one guy who, through a great spring, put himself in position to have a great season and, has now set himself up for life.
Yeah, and if I remember those 2 plays against J.T. Barrett in the spring game, it wasn't like he just happened to be at the right place at the right time on 2 overthrows and it hit him right in the breadbasket. Like, he made a ridiculous run to the ball on one of them. The other one was some kind of leaping one-handed interception. They were crazy plays. he just really established himself as a ball hawking safety. And again, as you mentioned, Steve, one of the great safety seasons in recent Ohio State memory. Speaking of which, as you make that comment about setting yourself up for a big career in February and March, that's exactly what 10 Buckeyes, former Buckeyes, are trying to do here in a few weeks at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, where you take one of the, you would have to say, the most prolific passing attack in the history of Ohio State football, and you take three of the key components at the wide receiver core with Terry McLaurin, Johnny Dixon, and Paris Campbell. Of course, Dwayne Haskins, he of 50 touchdown passes, and you remove them from the Ohio State offense, and we'll see how they perform, at least in shorts, in Indianapolis.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'll be out there in Indianapolis next week. The Combine basically stretches from February the 26th until about March 4th. We will have 4 days of interview sessions, February 27, 28, and then March 1st and 2nd, I believe, are those dates. I think maybe the 28th to the 3rd. I don't know. I'll have to check it out. But basically, we interview a couple of position groups every day. After those guys have weighed in, gotten some of their physical taken care of, you get a chance to talk to them. But we talk to them before they go through the workout phase with the 40-yard time and the reps on the bench press and the high jump and the cone drills and everything else, and the on-field work that they will do for scouts as well as the interview phase with a lot of these NFL teams. So as I say, look for those interviews next week on our site, bucknuts.com. We're going to try and get all 10 of the Buckeyes at the Combine. But just ticking them off, you look at Dwayne Haskins, a lot of people are projecting him to go number 6 overall to the New York Giants on the basis of one phenomenal season where he threw 50 touchdown passes. Is he the savior to go in there behind Eli Manning and lift that team? I think they were 5-11 this past year, to lift them back up to contention in the NFC East. If you play well, New York's a great place to be. If you go in there and you struggle, it's not a great place to be because of the media attention and everything else. I think Dwayne's got a good head on his shoulders. So if that's how it turns out for him, he just needs to go to Indianapolis and show what he's capable of doing, throwing that football and hitting receivers in stride. And I think that he'll maintain that spot. Nick Bosa, the defensive end, his season ended after the third game with a core muscle injury. His big thing is going to be showing that he's healthy. Everybody's got him projected going number 1 overall to the Arizona Cardinals, which is Cliff Kingsbury is now the coach there. And it'll be interesting to see if they do go defense with that number 1 pick or get him some other piece of the puzzle that he wants to play with, perhaps on the offensive side of the football, maybe a hot receiver or something like that. But Nick Bosa, as I wrote in the piece I did kind of previewing it, his most important thing is to ingratiate himself to the Arizona Cardinals. Prove to them that he is a quality human being and that he wants to be in Arizona and he wants to be the future of that franchise and be the J.J. Watt kind of influence on that franchise, or be the Nick Bosa or the Joey Bosa influence on that franchise. So that's important for him. One running back, Mike Weber, he left school early. I think most people look at him as a 5, 6, 7 round pick, probably just a third down back at this point in the NFL, but don't rule anything out. People have counted him out for years, and he had a great Rose Bowl. He left a tremendous impression, I think, on people by the way that he ended his career at the Rose Bowl with a big game running the ball out there. The 3 wide receivers, Paris Campbell, Terry McLaurin, Johnny Dixon. You hear Campbell may be the first one to go, maybe second, third round. McLaurin also in the mid rounds. Dixon, probably an undrafted free agent or a late round pick. He's got knee issues that have kind of hampered him in his time at Ohio State. His biggest thing will be the MRI and explaining and having trainers explain to team personnel, no, he checks out fine. He'll be okay. There's no arthritis. There's no tendonitis. There's no whatever may be holding him back. Offensive line, Isaiah Prince. He played right tackle at OSU for 3 years. I think at times he was dominating. I think at times that he wasn't. He had a lot of pre-snap penalties, jumping off sides or false starts. and did get beat for a few sacks here and there. So I think that, teams are going to be interested to get his explanation of how his career went at Ohio State. Michael Jordan played guard and center at Ohio State, and I think he's going to have a really bright NFL future. I felt he did an outstanding job at both positions. Maybe second round pick for him, maybe third round for Prince in that range. Draymond Jones over on defense, late first round, early second round, probably for him. And he left school a year early. Teams really keyed on him, and he felt double teams quite a bit once Nick Bosa was gone and out of the equation. They kind of shifted their blocking patterns to take care of Draymond Jones. He still made some game-changing plays throughout the season, and he's going to interview extremely well when he talks to NFL teams. He is going to really put the best foot forward. And the last guy, I think, is Kendall Sheffield, the cornerback. We honestly don't know a whole lot about him because he never really did any media interviews. So he's going to have to step out of his comfort zone when it comes time to sell himself to teams who are interested in knowing what makes him tick. And he's going to have more than one-word answers. He's going to need to smile and be gregarious and get that personality out there, which we never saw that out of Kendall Sheffield at Ohio State. Also, like Arnett, we talked about earlier, he had some issues with big plays and different things, but he is a really fast player. Wouldn't surprise me if he and Campbell, the wide receiver, are both sub 4.4. It is not known as a fast track in Indianapolis. I think if you run a 4.4 on that track, typically you have really accomplished something. I know Curtis Samuel ran a 4.31. I think Denzel Ward last year ran like a 4.32, and that's why those guys were taken so high in the draft, is because they displayed that speed. So if Campbell and Sheffield can get sub 4.4, it would help their stock immensely. I don't think Sheffield's probably any higher than a third-round pick right now, but maybe if he shows that speed and then teams say, well, we'll teach him how to play cover corner. He's never had, proper technique or whatever. We'll teach him how to do that. So I think I hit all 10 of them. Ohio State, year in and year out. I mean, to have 6 guys leaving early for the NFL draft, although Bosa, you kind of put a star by that. You lost him early in the season. Really only 5 guys that were there at the end of the season that you're missing. And Buckeyes, as we said, going into spring football, going to try and reload and come back stronger going for 2019.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, joined by Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts. And Steve joining us from the depths of, do they still call it the Schottenstein Center?
It is I'm in the bowels of the Schottenstein Center. Value City Arena is the playing arena. This is the 21st glorious year of the Schottenstein Center. And I've been around so long, I covered the games at St. John Arena for about 10 years, going back to when I was a student in the late 80s. They played one game there this year, and it was magical. They played Cleveland State, and people loved it. This place, for a big game when they're playing Duke or Michigan State, when they brought in some, top 5 teams, 19,000 people strong, it gets pretty cool. But tonight with the weather, we've had snow and now some really heavy rain going on out there. I don't foresee more than about 8 or 9 or 10,000 people here tonight, with an 8:30 Eastern time start too on a weeknight, a school night. Kind of hard to bring your kids to this late game tonight, but that's where we're at in the bowels of the arena. And the Buckeyes hoping to stave off a 2-game losing streak and get back in the NCAA picture.
Yeah, Steve, you're taking us back to the days of Gary Williams and Randy Ayers with
Dennis Hobson and Jimmy Jackson. And,
yes. Trey Lee also. We could keep going and going. But, 2 losses in a row on the bubble at 6-8 in the Big Ten after a loss to Michigan State. Got to get going. All right, Steve, we appreciate you stopping by. Know that you need to run and get ready to cover the basketball game, but appreciate the football coverage.
All right, Mark. Take care.